I never thought I would truly understand the weight of loss. Not until the day she was gone. My mother, my first home, my anchor, my constant, vanished from my life in a way that left a silence so heavy it pressed down on every part of me. That morning, the sunlight spilled through the half-open blinds of my childhood bedroom, painting golden stripes on the floor. Usually, I would hear her humming from the kitchen, the soft rhythm of her morning ritual blending into the warmth of the day. That morning, there was nothing. No warmth. Only a void that seemed to stretch endlessly. It was as if the world had stopped paying attention to my existence. I remember standing in the middle of that room, feeling the chill in the air, and realizing she would never again call my name, never again leave a small note on my desk telling me to eat breakfast, never again scold me for leaving the door open or laugh at my clumsy attempts to make coffee. People say grief changes you, but no one tells you it reshapes the architecture of your soul. It carves tunnels where joy used to live. It leaves debris of doubt, fear, and regret. And yet, in that emptiness, something unexpected began to stir, something I would not recognize until much later. The truth was harsh and simple. To love again, I first had to confront the terrifying reality that she was no longer here. Her passing didn't arrive like a storm that breaks suddenly. It came like shadows at dusk, slow and creeping. I had grown so used to her presence that I could barely see the cracks forming in the foundation of my life. One day, she was in the kitchen, smiling, checking if I had eaten breakfast, her hands busy with the familiar choreography of our home. The next, there were hospital corridors and the blinding white of fluorescent lights, the beeping of machines that felt as cold as the truth they measured. The doctor's words were clinical, final, and utterly unimaginable. I'm sorry. We did everything we could. She's gone. And suddenly, the entire universe seemed to collapse in on itself, leaving me gasping in a void I could not escape. I tried to remember how life had felt just moments before. The laughter at breakfast, the smell of her coffee, the way she would tap her fingers against the counter while waiting for the kettle to boil. All of it vanished like smoke, leaving a hollow space where certainty once lived. People around me murmured words that were meant to comfort, but they sounded like echoes from a distant world. She's in a better place, they said. Time heals all wounds. And yet, none of these words touched the raw, trembling chaos inside me. I wanted answers that did not exist. I wanted to feel her arms around me one last time. I wanted the impossible. I remember the night I sat on the edge of her bed, the one I had slept in as a child, and let myself finally cry. For hours, I screamed silently into the sheets, gripping the corners of the mattress until my knuckles turned white. The emptiness in that room was more than physical. It was the absence of guidance, the absence of laughter, the absence of a soul that had always seemed invincible. I felt untethered, as though someone had severed the rope that connected me to reality. Every thought of the future seemed futile, every plan meaningless. How could life possibly continue when the person who had defined every safe space, every comforting memory, every source of unconditional love, was no longer part of it? In those first few weeks, grief became my constant companion. It followed me into the kitchen, into my bedroom, into the crowded streets of the city where people moved as if nothing had changed. Friends would ask, "How are you?" And I would force a smile, say the words that felt hollow, "I'm okay." But inside, I was unraveling. I stopped checking the mail. I avoided the phone. Even social media felt alien, a world of people living in light while I dwelled in shadow. Everything I had known as normal now seemed artificial, as if I were watching life through a pane of distorted glass, where everything was familiar yet unreachable. The paradox of grief is that life does not pause. Bills still arrive. Work still demands attention. Family still expects you to function. But you are no longer the same person who existed before loss. Every sound becomes a reminder. Every scent triggers a memory. Every empty chair becomes a symbol of absence. I began noticing patterns I had never paid attention to. The way her favorite mug sat in the cupboard. The way her glasses rested on the nightstand. The faint scent of her perfume lingering in corners. Small details, seemingly insignificant, became monuments to a life that was no longer tangible. I could reach out and touch nothing but air. It was during one of those long, endless nights that I realized something crucial. Grief was not just sadness. It was a transformation. It was an unrelenting teacher. It demanded to be felt fully, consumed entirely, before it could release you into understanding. I began to question everything: my sense of security, my ability to trust, my capacity to love again. Could I ever open my heart without fear? Could I ever embrace someone fully, knowing the pain of losing someone so central to my world? These questions haunted me, lurking in the shadows of every thought, whispering doubts I had no way to silence. The house, once warm and lively, now felt like a museum of memories. Every object, every photograph, every corner whispered her name. I found myself talking to her as if she were still there, recounting the smallest victories and defeats of my day, seeking advice from an empty room. I didn't do it consciously at first. It was instinct, a survival mechanism, a way to bridge the impossible gap between presence and absence. And yet, in that quiet, private dialogue, I began to notice something unexpected: the depth of my own capacity for reflection, for empathy, for feeling. Her absence, while devastating, created a space in which I could confront the complexity of human emotion in a way I had never been forced to before. Somewhere in those long nights, in that unbroken cycle of grief and memory, I began to see the first flickers of something I could not yet name. A kind of resilience, a stubborn thread of hope that, despite everything, life might still offer connection, love, and meaning. But it was tentative, fragile, and easily snuffed out by a single memory, a single pang of longing. I realized that to survive, I would need to relearn everything I thought I knew about love, about attachment, about the human heart's ability to heal. Losing her was not the end of my story, it was the beginning of a journey I was unprepared for but could not avoid. I tried to find her in others. I looked for fragments of her wisdom, her kindness, her humor, in friends, in strangers, in fleeting encounters. Sometimes I thought I saw her in a smile, in the way someone paused to offer help, in the quiet way a neighbor handled life's small crises. Each time, I felt a mix of warmth and sorrow, a reminder that she had shaped me so profoundly that her absence could never erase her influence. And yet, each reminder also carried the sting of impossibility. She was gone. Not temporarily, not for a moment, permanently. The paradox of grief is that it isolates and connects at the same time. I felt unbearably alone, yet every act of remembering, every tear, every whispered thought to the empty room created a link, an invisible thread connecting me to her memory, to the life we had shared, to the love that had once been my world. That thread, delicate and almost imperceptible, became the foundation upon which I would eventually begin to rebuild. Months passed. Life moved forward reluctantly. Friends and family returned to their routines, as did I, clinging to the illusion that function could replace feeling. Yet nothing replaced the person I had lost. I realized that my journey toward loving again would not be linear. It would not be about forgetting. It would be about carrying her lessons, her spirit, her generosity into new experiences, into new relationships, without diminishing the significance of what had been lost. And so, a shadow of her absence, I discovered something profound. Love is not finite. The heart, though it may shatter, does not break beyond repair. It learns, slowly, painfully, and beautifully, to expand, to hold absence and presence simultaneously, to embrace new connections while honoring the old, to survive the unthinkable and, eventually, to love again. In the stillness of that first night alone in her house, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would carry her with me, not as a burden, not as a ghost, but as a guide. I would navigate the terrifying, exhilarating, painful landscape of grief, and emerge with a capacity to love that I could never have imagined. And though I did not know how, I sensed the truth that would shape every choice, every relationship, every heartbeat that followed. Losing her had not taken love from me, had taught me what it truly meant to love.